If, like me, you reckon stress and anxiety are at all-time highs, then you'd probably want to know how do you best cope with that. So we have a saying, we say stress leads to anxiety, anxiety leads to overwhelm, and overwhelm leads to depression. Let me say it a different way. Stress, when experienced, is actually the result of the stories that we tell ourselves. And we're fond of saying that Fred yelled at me, was rude to me and was nasty, and that's why I'm upset, you know. She made me angry is the most common story you're ever going to hear. But it is a story, it ain't the truth, mate. The reality is I tell myself the story to justify the feelings. There's any number of things out there that we can blame, but the problem is those stories keep us trapped in the stress. Stress is actually the refusal to accept that what is. Stress is the first level, and if we don't handle it at the first level, then we're going to get in all sorts of problems, because if we need for other people to change their behaviour so that we can be happy, our happiness depends on their behaviour. And trust me, and you probably already know this, people don't necessarily change their behaviour because they should. Yeah, it's true. Some people ought to wake up, they ought to grow up, they ought to change their behaviour dramatically and stop impacting negatively on everybody around them. But the reality is they're probably not going to do that. So stress isn't something that we can make go away, but it is something that we can deal with grace and dignity if we stop telling the stories about how it's being done to us and it's not our fault. So blame should be the red flag when it comes to dealing with stress. Interesting thing about stress is if we don't have a stress management strategy, in other words, if there aren't things that you do on a regular basis to bring the stress levels down, and I mean walk on the beach, go for a picnic, meditate, pray, whatever works for you in terms of bringing the stress levels down, if you don't have an active, programmed, regulated stress management strategy, stress is going to get you. Stress, allowed to exist over a period of time, builds up into generalized anxiety. In other words, anxiety, if you describe anxiety, it's kind of stress prolonged. In other words, I'm anxious about what's going on at the moment. So stress prolonged moves from an emotion into a mood, and a mood is something that could go for a day, a week, a month, a year. And when I suffer from background anxiety, now I'm in real trouble, because stress management processes don't really deal with anxiety. Because what anxiety produces is adrenaline in our bloodstream, because our early warning mechanism that protects us from danger is fired up full time. So we're walking around on red alert. We're waiting for something to go wrong. And if it doesn't go wrong, that's okay, we were ready. But we're expecting it to happen. If you allow anxiety to go on, and really what I'm saying is to get the adrenaline down, you've got to do the same things as I mentioned in stress, and that is you've got to find the things that relax and calm you. What are the things that you do that uplift your spirit, that make you, that when you finish them, you feel better than when you started? And if that's gardening, great. Well, you've got to get into your garden. If it's fishing, that's cool. Doesn't matter what it is. The problem with a lot of these things is that they require huge amounts of time, and you can't do that whilst you're at work. But you can take 5 minutes out from work, close your eyes and imagine that you're on your boat fishing, and that'll deliver you 80% of the benefits of actually being on the boat, and you don't have to get covered in the sunscreen and the sweat and the sand and have smelly fish all over you. So in many ways it might actually be better. But if we don't do the things that are uplifting of our spirit, that feel us refreshed and revitalized and renewed, we're going to go down. So first is stress, second is anxiety, what follows is overwhelm. So anxiety allowed to go on morphs into overwhelm, because most of us are holding off stress and drama and anxiety by doing lots. And so most of us have got a list of things to do today that Superwoman would need a week to get done, and we're disappointed in ourselves when we don't get it done. So we feel like we're battling with the world. The more things I get on my list and tick them off, the more things seem to turn up and need doing. You know, we can turn up at every meeting at school, we can be there for our partner, we can be there for our kids, we can run our business, but we get exhausted, and what happens is we have the sense of being overcome by the avalanche of what needs to be done just to stay level. Overwhelm is a feeling there's more to do than I have the capacity or the resources to do. Overcome is it's bigger than me and I drowned. if overwhelm is allowed to persist, what happens is we get depressed. Depression is loss of hope. Depression is that sense that no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I just can't get on top of it. So depression equals distress, and I think distress is a great way to describe what happens to people who are depressed. And it's kind of like we're out in the ocean, we've got a life raft, but it's leaking and we're slowly going under, and our only hope of survival is to stick our hand up and say help. And for goodness sake, if you are depressed and you are feeling distressed, it's very important that you reach out to either us or some organisation that you feel can help. Any of the organisations who devote themselves to making an impact in people's lives such that they will survive. The reason you need to know this stuff is there are people that you know who could use it. Maybe you could use it yourself. It's more likely that you could go out there and make a difference in your family, in your community, simply by recognising what's going on. And that is to say to yourself, stress equals stories. Somebody who's stressed is telling themselves stories. Maybe I can help them see it a different way, tell a different story. Anxiety equals adrenaline. Maybe I can help them. Maybe I'm going to take them on a picnic. Maybe I'm going to take them fishing. Maybe I'm going to suggest they do that. Overwhelm equals overcome. How do we shorten the list? Delegate things, move things on, take a break, whatever. And depression equals distress. Someone's asking for help. Maybe I've just got to turn up. Do those things, and the chances are you're going to have a massive impact on your family, your community, perhaps even your country.